you. Good evening. It's 5:30 on July 28th, and it's time for the City Council and Planning Commission joint session. And tonight we're going to hear from Geoff Hunsaker, Public Works Director, and Heather Richards, Community Development Director, on the City Council's, or the city's Transportation System Plan, TSP 101.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Commissioners. So we're having the kickoff for our large transportation system plan project. This is going to be a 2-year-long project, so there's a lot to come, and we decided it would be best to start off with a bit of a base level 101 session for you all about what the plan is, what it will be, and all the different steps along the way. So I and Heather, our Director Richards, are the co-project managers for this project. It's very much a technical engineering and planning type document, so there's a lot going on with this one. And then sitting up here with us today is Mark Boderak. He is our project manager for our consultant, and I'll let him introduce himself as well. And he's going to be giving tonight's presentation.
There we go. Good evening, Council and Planning Commission. Again, Mark Boderak with Kittleson Associates. Pleasure to be here. I've worked for McMinnville on and off for the last 32 years, so it's always good to get back in front of you all. So we're going to take you through TSP 101 tonight and also relate how it works, and each body relies on the transportation system plan in their deliberations. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what we're going to update, what we're not going to update, and then the bigger policy decisions that we'll be looking to Planning Commission and City Council to take a look at. So let's just first off on our agenda. So we'll start with the basics on what's the transportation system plan, but we could do a little family feud tonight between Planning Commission and City Council. What's the date of the current transportation system plan, anybody? 2010, correct, Councilor Geary. So it's been 16 years, and if you think back 16 years, a lot's changed. Technology has changed. We have electric bikes now that we didn't really have back then. We had a pandemic. We've changed travel patterns. The city has grown. So it's overdue for an update. So we'll talk about the TSP. We'll talk about how it fits within the Oregon planning rule context and what the planning rule is all about, why we're updating it. Am I going to have to get in closer?
You have to inhale it so that we can pick it up in the recording.
All right, we'll do this. Okay. And then we'll talk about how we go through the process of identifying needs. And then we'll talk about your roles and how those will play in upcoming decisions through the next 2 years on the update to the transportation system plan. So we're here basically, I want to give you a better understanding of the TSP and how it's used, explain that regulatory context, and then we'll talk about those major complex or decisions here as we did a little further into the presentation tonight. Please feel free to stop me, raise your hand online and here, and we can stop. We'll have some pauses as we break through the sections for y'all to ask any questions that you may have. So, project team roles, a lot of players in this project. Obviously, Heather and Geoff are going to be leading from the city side. The consultant team, we have Kittleson and Associates. We're based out of Portland, Oregon, transportation firm, and we also have 3J Consulting. They will be our land use and code assist, and then we have GLA Public Involvement that'll assist on the public involvement, and I know have been in front of you all recently on other projects in the city. We also have partner agencies, obviously. We'll be working with ODOT, Yamhill County, Yamhill Transit. We'll be working with both groups here, and then the community in general, and then we'll have both a technical and project advisory committee to staff. The technical is mostly going to be agency staff from the partner agencies in the city, and then the project advisory committee will be various representatives throughout the community, and we'll be developing that here over the next month or two to get into the project. So a transportation system plan really boils down, it's the framework and it's our guidelines for the next 20 year on how the system should function and improve over that time frame. We look out 20 years because one, that's what the requirement is, but two, it's enough time that you have pretty good understanding of population and employment projections, and you can have pretty good estimates there, and you also have a decent understanding of kind of financial opportunities and constraints within that time period. And then a lot of the grants that we go after at the federal level want to see a 20-year plan. So that's one of the requirements on what we do. It identifies really 4 things: projects, policies, programs, and priorities. It's going to address all the modal needs. So we're going to look at cycling to walking to transit. We'll also touch a little bit on aviation. Mostly we defer to the airport master plan on that, but we do touch all modes of transportation. And then it will also, and we'll get more into this, it's going to help guide you all from a budgeting standpoint on capital planning and then what grants to go after and future investment decisions as we go forward. And ultimately, it's going to connect the community of McMinnville and allow it to continue to grow for the next 20 years. So there's a few things that TSP actually does, and there's ones that doesn't. So I won't read all these, but I'm going to hit on a few. It sets the foundation for your capital improvement plan as well as your system development charge. So the SDC that all the developers love to pay, that is based on the projects that are in the transportation system plan and the cost of those projects. So that's an underpin from a legal standpoint that you need that. It also provides that legal framework. So going back to the Planning Commission and City Council make decisions, you have to tie back to that. You have your comprehensive plan, which is kind of your legal framework that you work from, and the transportation system plan is a transportation element of the comprehensive plan. So when you have zone changes, for instance, and you're looking at changes to land use, you revert back to the transportation system plans, its goals, its vision, and make decision on, is it aligning with those goals and visions, or is it detracting from those goals and visions from that standpoint? So it's important that we get those goals and visions correct and we have agree upon, because obviously as a council and planning commission, when you make decisions, you want to agree with the vision that you've set in the community and the goals and evaluation criteria that have come about. What does the TSP not do? It doesn't fund or construct projects immediately, so even if we prioritize a project as high priority or fiscally constrained, that project's not going to be out having a D9 kick up dirt next week. It basically says over the next 20 years, at least that fiscally constrained project, we see it occurring somewhere in that 20-year time frame. Money will dictate, but also priorities and city council guidance will dictate when those projects happen. We don't get into detailed engineering at this point, so we stay at the 10,000 foot view. When you get into final design, you're down obviously at the 10-foot view. So how are the specific impacts of a new road? Well, we generally know they need to go through some properties, but does it take a specific house? Does it have an impact to a specific wetland? We're not at that level. We're more at that 10,000 foot level. It doesn't eliminate public process, so these projects will all have to go through a public process when they come forward at a few points, but they also say these are the projects that we want. So for instance, if a developer comes and wants to build a subdivision and build a road, and that road's in the transportation system plan, it's very difficult for city council to say, no, you can't build that road, because that's the framework in which that they're looking and they're making their decisions on. And we're gonna not try to solve all the transportations at once. One thing, we don't have the money, but two, it has to work both from a capital improvement standpoint of investments, it has to be flexible to funding, and it also has to provide a guidance for development. Most of the infrastructure in the last 20 or 30 years in and around McMinnville has really been developed by developers, not the city. So if you look at all the roads, a lot of them have been developed by the private sector. And that's what we want, and this provides a roadmap for them to work on. So any questions on what a TSP or what is it not? I know some of you are a little bit new, but others have been at this for a while, so this may be old hat. Okay. Yes, Mr. Evers.
Does the TSP also give guidelines for traffic impact studies for developments?
Indirectly, it does. Your ordinances take care of that. And we'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of it, but it sets the framework and it can set the performance measures, and then your ordinances dictate the TIA guidelines themselves.
And I'll just help follow up on that a little bit. So Mark Bryan is a planning commissioner. We don't have local guidelines established in our ordinance for traffic impact analysis. So we've talked at the planning commission and planning staff that we'd like this effort to sort of lead us in that direction, so we codify it. So a codification of that process and what's required will come out of this project.
Yep, great.
Yes, your turn.
And does this have the potential to address safety concerns in terms of transportation as well?
Yeah, you're going to lead us into the next part, but yes, it will identify existing safety concerns and potential safety concerns, and then identify either programs, policies, or projects to minimize or hopefully eliminate those safety instances.
Scylla?
And this is all forms of transportation, not just vehicular, it's also bicycles and pedestrians?
Correct, all forms.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Good. Okay.
Okay, well, let's move forward. So just to give you a little bit of backdrop, I wanted to provide kind of where this comes from and why we're doing it. And I developed these slides. You see a lot of text on them, but it's more as a reference document for you. So that's why it's been developed the way it is. But going back in time, in 1991, the Oregon adopted the transportation planning rule. And with the transportation planning rule, basically set up the guidance to balance land use and transportation. Oregon was one of the first states in the country to really look at that in an in-depth way. And then they said, to do this, all cities and counties of a certain size, basically all counties, and then any city over about 2,500 people has to do a transportation system plan. Well, it was a great idea. It was an unfunded mandate in 1991. So in 1993, the Transportation Growth Management Program came about, which helps fund and offset some of these projects over time. But if you go into the transportation planning rule, and it's Oregon Administrative Rule 660-012, that whole section, if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, great reading material right there. It's about 200 pages. You don't have to get into that, but if you want to understand why we're doing it, how we're doing it, that is the rule book that everybody plays by in the state of Oregon. And as we go through the adoption, one of the processes is we have to notify the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So they look, did we conform with the Oregon Administrative Rule on Transportation System Plan? So that just gives you a little bit of backdrop. And as we go through this, we need to make sure we're in alignment with federal and state policies and plans, and then local plans. We don't want to create a conflict with what Yamhill County is trying to do, or for instance, the transit agency. So we have to look beyond ourselves, and they have to also be consistent with ourselves. So there's a little bit with our partners to make sure we have a streamlined thing. You don't want a 5-lane road coming to the end of the city, and all of a sudden there's a 2-lane road. So those transition points, and then if there's other service providers providing service within the community, for instance, ODOT or the transit agency, they need to be brought along and consistent. So we do a plan review, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So updating the TSP now, other than it being 16 years old, there's a number of things that have been going on. I'm not going to read all through these, but there's a number of things that you've identified as a council, staff has identified, planning commission has identified. All these things go in, and now you're making an investment to update your transportation system plan to really address those seven elements, and there's others, but those are some of the things that we need to be cognizant of it as we go through this process. So how does this impact future land use and development? So first off, I went back, we talked about the projections. We are going to do employment projections and population projections to see where we're going to be in 20 years. And then, do we have a transportation system that can support that? And if not, what do we need to do from a program, policy, project level to make that occur? We also need to make sure that future developments contribute to that and don't go in a different direction from that. So when you're reviewing developments, either with a traffic impact study or with a zone change, is it consistent with the assumptions that you've made in your transportation system plan? And if not, what changes are they going to have to do, or is the city going to have to take on to accommodate that? And that's where we get to significant impact. So anytime you've had a zone change that moves its way up from Planning Commission to City Council, the 060 requirements of significant impact, that's where the rubber hits the road with the transportation system plan. Is it in alignment with that, or is it different than that? And if so, how do you mitigate that difference, or can you mitigate that difference? So that's a really critical piece on how the TSP impacts day in, day out development. The other thing it does is if you're building a road, what's the cross-section or the half-street improvement that you put in front of your property? The TSP very much dictates that. Do you have a cycle track? Do you have an 8-foot sidewalk? Do you have a 12-foot sidewalk? That will be items that will be addressed. Obviously, you have standards that are in place now. We'll take a look and say, maybe here are a few areas that we need to update those standards or enhance those standards. So what we do here is going to impact development, but also is going to impact your decision-making as the two governing bodies when it comes to land use, when it moves beyond staff on staff decisions. All right, so how does the TSP fit into other plans? We've kind of hit this. But comp plan, it's the transportation element, capital improvement program, it's going to seed those projects. So we're going to have prioritized projects, and staff will come in front of you each time the CIP is updated and say, okay, here are the projects we think we have the funding and we want to move these in. How do those come out of the TSP and how do they align? We talked about the development code, could have new traffic impact standards, new cross-sectional standards. It also needs to tie in, and we need to look at all the other kind of elements of the plan. So the parks plan, economic development plan, to make sure we have alignment with that. And other initiatives that you're trying to do, and then other regional planning efforts that we're trying to do. So we need to be cognizant, for instance, the Newburgh-Dundee bypass as it continues to move along at a very slow pace, but as it does, it changes what happens out on 3 Mile Lane, changes what happens on the 99 corridor. You take the bottlenecks out north of town, more traffic flows into town in a quicker fashion than it does today. So you just think about, when I drove down, and you've all done this, as you're coming down 99 before the cutoff there at Dayton on 18, that backs up a lot. Once the Newburgh-Dundee bypass eventually comes in, and that becomes, the 4-lane section sits a little bit to the east of that, but once that comes in and that bottleneck goes away, more traffic comes down at a higher pace. So if you look out here on 2nd Street, the queue before we started the meeting that's back a few blocks, well, there's going to be ramifications because you've removed upstream bottlenecks that are outside of the city's control from that standpoint. So we have to look how we fit with those plans, and we have to anticipate those changes over the next 20 years. So any questions on the TSP relationship to other planning exercises or activities?
Councilor Chenoweth?
Thank you, Mayor. So on the population projections, using Portland State?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Gary?
It's never been clear if it's its own model that we get, or if this is what we call it and other people call it the same thing, but the Safe Routes to School program. Mm-hmm. Does a new one get generated because of this TSP update? Is that something else entirely? Does that get created and dovetail with ours? Do we keep the same Safe Routes to School?
I'm going to defer to Heather. I have an answer, but there may be a more nuanced answer here in the city. Okay. Safe Routes to School is what I would say it's a sister type of program, but while they interrelate, they also operate somewhat independently, because the Safe Routes to School generally is looking in that nearest mile to schools and really at a micro level. So the TSP, we're up at 10,000 feet. A lot of those Safe Routes to School, we're down at the 5-foot level. We want a crosswalk here. We want a crossing guard here. We want a bicycle bus going to school so we get more people. So if a Safe Routes to School process is adopted and then you come in and do a TSP, the TSP is going to look at that first. And then what the TSP does may or may not affect the Safe Routes to School. Now, it's not to say you may not want to update a Safe Routes to School, but by definition, a TSP isn't going to automatically change what a Safe Routes to School program needs to do.
So, and just to follow up on that, we are applying, so Mark talked about the TGM grant, which is a Transportation Growth Management Grant. We aren't using that for this larger TSP work, but we are applying for some funds, $100,000, to dive deeper into alternative trans planning. And that would be for the bike, pedestrian, any non-vehicular travel in terms of the infrastructure system. So I can see some discussion with Safe Routes to School when we get into that type of planning if we get that grant.
Very good, thanks.
Any other questions? I think we're good.
All right, well, let's keep moving here. So now we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be getting into. So there's some core elements of any TSP update, and community engagement is first and foremost. You have to have that contextual, and we'll talk about how we're going to do that here in a second. Identifying those goals, objectives, and performance measures. You did this back in 2010. We'll take a look at those. We'll look at different policies at the federal and state level, and then we will work with the community and the advisory committees to come up with revised goals and objectives and performance measures. And sometimes a revision is a word change. Sometimes it might be an entire new goal. Sometimes it may be substituting out a goal. So it doesn't automatically say we got to throw everything out from 2010. That's a starting point. And generally, you're going to see minor tweaks. This is your third transportation system plan. So the first time out of the gates, it's kind of a little rough. Second time, you learn some stuff. Third time, you've learned a lot. So when you get to third and fourth generation transportation system plans, a lot of the goals and objectives stay relatively the same. You may have things that have changed a little bit politically or technology that's changed that you want to focus on, let's say EVs or electric bikes a little bit more differently. But a lot of this is apple pie type of stuff. Obviously, we want safe streets for all. I don't think there's going to be anybody in meeting saying, no, we don't want that. So those things are going to be kind of stay consistent, but we may have some minor adjustments to that. We're going to look at existing conditions. We're going to study about 70 plus intersections. So actually doing new counts at those intersections, seeing how they operate. The safety question earlier, we will be looking at crash data for all the intersections and segments within the community, looking at the last 5 years, especially on what were the rates, what were those high areas of concern, and where with the future growth, how will things change? So we'll look at existing, then we'll look 20 years out with that employment and layout, kind of what we call a no-build situation. So if nothing changes and we put more pedestrians, more bicyclists, more buses, more cars, more trucks on the facilities, things are going to break. So what are those? How bad do they break? And then how do we mitigate that? And there's some ways, you can put more asphalt on the ground. Other ways, you have to come up with more creative solutions. We're not going to widen third to 5 lanes. Obviously, that's not going to happen. When I first started here 30 years ago, we actually at that point looked at a third first couplet. That didn't politically fly at that time and probably wouldn't fly today. But those are type of solutions where maybe you can't solve it in one way, but you look at maybe we do a couplet and that solves it, or we do something different from a policy standpoint or a program standpoint. So we'll be looking at that. That'll identify the needs to the solutions, and then we'll evaluate and prioritize those projects, and then talk about funding and implementation, and then the TSP document and the adoption process itself. So I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into each one of these just to give you a little bit better understanding. So the TSP, if you go back to those administrative rules in the transportation planning, there's some things that you must do. And there's some things that you should do, and there's the things that are optional. So everything up here in the purple, the must, obviously we're going to do those. The should are ones that have been built into the scope. And then the can are also things that staff and the team have seen as needs. So those are all going to be elements that we're going to be looking at as we go through this transportation system plan. Now, if we're up in Newburgh, they don't have to do the cans and the shoulds. They have to do the musts. So the shoulds are a little bit more optional, but it's kind of highly encouraged. The cans are very optional from that standpoint. But this just gives you a little bit of lay of the land of those items. We've hit on some of those earlier. Existing and future conditions, I talked a little bit about that. That travel demand modeling, that's going to be a critical element. We've already started working with the modelers and starting to get that underway because that takes a long time to get going. But we also need to look at that and then start forecasting and evaluating the intersections and walking, biking, transit, and freight needs. We'll talk about, I know you guys like level of service and volume to capacity ratios, so we'll do a little bit of that at the end, but we'll be talking about level of stress for both pedestrians and bicyclists and their traffic considerations. So we'll be looking at all those modes and looking at performance measures for each one of those. So how are we going to kind of engage the public? So from a basic standpoint, there'll be a project website the city will host. We'll have those advisory committees we talked about. We'll also have in-person and virtual open houses. In person, that brick and mortar really helps, but what we find is the virtual open houses, I'm doing the transportation system plan for Clackamas County. I think we had 5,000 people visit that site in a few week period. So you just need a lot more coverage, and those websites are becoming a lot more user-friendly. My problem as a consultant is everybody thinks it should operate like the Alaska Airlines app, and Alaska has spent millions of dollars on that app. So it's going to be a little bit more simple than that, but it is a lot easier, and a lot of people, we find about 80% of the people come to see TSPs via their cell phones, and it's not at a desktop, which isn't surprising, but you then have to have an open house that can really convey at that level from that understanding. We'll do some pop-up tabling events. You guys have done these on other recent projects. We'll have online surveys, some drop-in style open houses, and then some targeted focus groups throughout. You'll hear, obviously, as counselors and planning commissions, I'm sure you're stopped every day in the streets, but you'll hear, and we'll take that impact or input. But we really want to have that lived experience. We can bring the technical expertise, we can bring the national expertise, but how it's lived and how it's going to be lived for the next 20 years, that's really where the community needs to shape the transportation system plan at the end of the day. So we've kind of hit on this. Yeah, we're going to be covering all users. And the good thing is McMinnville's done a lot. Obviously, you have a lot of ADA improvements on 99 going on. And you've invested in some active transportation work in the past, so that'll be dovetailed in, but there'll be more work on that. And we'll also be looking at emergency response and access. Sometimes that gets lost in the fray. Fire department doesn't lose it, but it's critical to keep that in front of mind as we go through the process. So when we look at how do we evaluate these needs, we really go, and I'll just use a flow chart. We talk about that goal development, so we set up our goals. Then our evaluation criteria on how are we going to evaluate our projects and policies and programs. Then we go out and we look at the old TSP and say, okay, what projects didn't get done from that? Should those still stay with us? And then we do the new work, both existing and future, and say what other additional needs. So that identifies a big group of needs. And then we say, what's our performance measure? Is it going to be level of service? Is it going to be volume to capacity? Is it going to be system completeness? We'll have a discussion on that because how you're graded changes how you perform. What gets measured gets done. You've probably heard that many times. So we'll get that, and then that will then help us develop a project list, and then we'll look for feedback from the advisory committees and community to help prioritize that based on our evaluation goals from that standpoint. Okay, so just a little bit more detail on what we go. So we identify those needs, identify solutions. So maybe is it a roundabout? Is it a mid-block crossing? Is it a transit line? We screen and evaluate those alternatives. Then we refine those alternatives. We develop cost estimates because that does play a role, obviously, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint. We also then identify policy and program recommendations. Can we do this some way differently than putting pavement or concrete on the street? And if not, we still have projects, obviously. Then we prioritize those investments into a fiscal constraint, so what we think we can do in the next 20 years. and then the next set of projects, and then a final vision set of projects. And vision are usually projects you don't think you're going to be able to do them in the next 20 years, but if there's a change in development patterns or something changes, you want to make sure that this roadway or this bike path or whatever it might be is in place. So those are usually in your vision plan. You still can require them, you can still do them, but you're basically saying to the community, these are nice to haves, they're not need to haves in the next 20 years, and we probably don't have the money to do those. So we will break those priorities up into kind of a high, medium, low standpoint. And then we're going to have projects, for instance, on Adams and Baker that are kind of joint projects. It's an ODOT facility and city. So how do we split the funding needs for that? So those will be conversations with ODOT and other agencies as we get into that. So we're going to come back to you because costing and funding and implementation is a critical element. Always has been, but it's more critical right now. You've been reading in the media, ODOT doesn't have any money. I was just in a legislative work group last week. There's $6 billion of major projects that are on the books right now. And these are projects you've seen in the news. This is Rose Corridor. This is Center Street Bridge. This is I-205, the next lane, Boone Bridge south of Wilsonville. $6 billion, and only about $1 billion of those are funded. That's not to say you have the interstate bridge replacement that is another. If you were just to fund those projects, we'd have to increase the gas tax by 19 cents and start building today. Because every year we wait, the inflation goes and you'd have to move the gas tax up. So, good luck with the legislators. I don't think we'll get a 19-cent gas tax in January, but just gives you a size of the gap. At the local level, you're facing the same pressures. You have the match that comes in from the gas tax. And the gas tax is getting beat on two fronts, and you've probably heard this. Inflation, the cost of projects is going up. The last 5 or 6 years, we've been at a 5% average, which is more than most of us have gotten salary raises and everything from that. Some of that comes from supply disruption during the pandemic. Others comes from just a supply demand. The contractors have more work than they can do, so they escalate their prices. And then some of the materials from overseas have gone up in cost. So that's going up. Gas tax isn't like those that have lived in other states. It's not like a sales tax. It's a set amount of pennies that you pay at the pump each time. So it's not 6% of the $6 you might have paid here a few weeks ago or a month or two ago. It is a set number. So it doesn't have any escalator. So every year that goes by, its buying power drops just because it's not moving with that. Also, I won't put everybody on the spot, but all the EVs on the road in Oregon right now are not really paying for their fair share. They pay a little bit in some set fees, but they're not covering that. And then all the gas combustion engine cars, they're getting better fuel mileage. So the amount of times we have to go to the pump is less. So each one of those makes the buying power of gas tax less, and less. Thus, from a city standpoint, you get less. So one of the things I talked with staff about is generally get to the end of these projects and we say, hey, city council, we won't have $6 billion worth of projects, but we got a lot of projects and you got this tiny funding source and everybody goes, oh, that's tough. But what we want to do in this project is kind of move that discussion up in the process so you understand where we're at today. So the list of projects from the 2010 TSP, before we even start, what's the size of that need? And then what is the funding estimate over the next 20 years, and what is that? And that will be, spoiler alert, that's going to be a lot less than that other cost. So we're going to come back in October and work with you and just give you what that delta is, and then what are potential funding mechanisms to close that gap or look at ways to leverage funding with other grants and so forth. But that's going to be a critical piece. I know every year you guys go through budgeting. That's not a simple exercise, but transportation is a very acute thing, and I do not see a whole lot of changes in that. And most of your funding that does come through the state gas tax, that's going to continue to go down and down over time. So we need to address how are we going to address these needs at a city level and what potential funding sources that we can go through. So we'll come back in October and work with you on that. All right, other questions on what we're going to accomplish and how?
Counselor Benner?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the detailed explanation about the funding. Can you explain again, let's say we go through this process and decide that we want a certain width of sidewalk, and that then down the road, we're implementing this and we don't have the money for that certain size of sidewalk. How much of a box are we putting ourselves in when does this become sort of a legal framework that we make a decision that new houses have to have this wide of whatever, and then down the road we realize that we just can't afford that, or it's impeding growth or something like that?
Yeah, great question. You're making a decision, and when you ultimately, Planning Commission recommends to City Council and City Council adopts it, it's a binding agreement. So if the city goes out and builds a project, the expectation is that 8-foot sidewalk goes in. If developer A goes out and they develop and they need to build that 8-foot sidewalk. So if you're going to change from that, you got to collectively change it together. You can't require, for instance, the developer to build 8 feet, but if it's a city project, it's 5 feet. So that has to be consistent. So we have to look at it and say, okay, what do we want as a community, and realize the fiscal potential impacts of that, both on the city side and on a development side. Yep.
I guess just to follow that up, if we were going to, because these are policies and standards we'll be adopting, if we decide 5 years down the road that we need to amend those policies and standards, we can go into an amendment process of the TSP. And you'll find that staff, I think at the end of this project, is going to recommend that the city as a body looks at the TSP every 5 to 10 years to update it. So you can have those questions of what's working, what's not working in terms of the policy setup. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, because we've had that discussion based on some projects that have come through, when Mark was talking about we as a city will adopt policies for performance standards, and then based on those performance standards, it will impact our project list and impact our overall funding amount. So if you remember, we've talked about at times that our current TSP we're operating under has a 0.90 performance standard for intersections. So we call that the V/C ratio, the vehicle capacity ratio. So we're willing to go to 90% of the overall capacity of an intersection before we say it's failing. A lot of cities have a 0.80, so they say they're a little more conservative, and they say we want to go to an 80% capacity rate at intersections before we say they're failing and you need to mitigate it with another improvement. The reason that McMinnville went to 90% was because the project list was getting so big based on a lower, more conservative performance measurement. And so by changing that performance measurement to 0.90, that changed the project list of what needed to be built to mitigate that performance at these intersections. So those are all questions that we're going to help lead you through, that, pushing on this lever is going to impact this lever over here in terms of the final outcome, and what does that all look like. I hope I said that the right way.
Yes.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go back to population because this is something that's really a concern to me. Do you know on their website, on Portland State's website, the last numbers for McMinnville are 2017? Do you know if they have any more recent that we're actually going to be basing this off of?
Yeah, so we legally have to use the PSU population forecast, and the most recent one they issued was in 2024.
Okay. I have the reason why this is of concern to me, just looking at the 2017 one, which is the one I could actually download. That if there's a 2024 one, I couldn't get to it. It's flatlined from 2017 to 2025. They anticipated we were going to go from 34,000 to 38,000 people, but what actually happened was a 500 population increase from 2017 to 2025.
Yeah.
So, if we're using numbers where Portland State is saying we're expecting a 15% increase, give or take, and the reality is not that, then we're projecting a TSP plan based upon a population growth that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And when you look at the numbers for school enrollments, when you look at birth rates, it doesn't look to me like their projections going out to 2067, which continually show an increase, are going to hold true.
Yeah, so they update their forecasts they're on a 3-year cycle to update them. They do their population forecast based on historic trends. So McMinnville's been in a very slow growth period for the last 15 to 20 years, so that's impacting forecasts moving forward. And then also what's happening at the state and national levels in terms of trends. So you'll find the 2024 population forecast has very different numbers than the 2017 one. Also, the other thing to keep in mind is we talk about 20-year planning horizons when we're doing growth planning. And the irony of it all is that, we start with our growth planning number when we establish our need for land with a 20-year horizon. So our start was 2021 to 2041. And then we're supposed to plan facilities, infrastructure to support that. But when we start those efforts, it's usually a couple of years down the road because we're still working through all the growth planning. So the 20-year horizon for our infrastructure plans are different than that 2021 to 2041. So I think for the TSP, we looked at 2050. Is that our horizon that we're looking for? Yep. So we'll be looking at the 2050 population horizon, planning horizon, using the PSU, most recent PSU population forecast. And I'd be happy to send that to you, Counselor.
Beat me to my question. I was going to ask if we could put it in the packet or something so I can have access to it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll send it to everyone. But we don't have a choice on what population forecast to use. That is regulated by the state law.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Budrek?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's perfect.
Name.
So we use that 20-year forecast, but it's preferred to be updating this regardless every 5 to 10 years to kind of check in. That's just something we haven't been able to do, but we're shooting for that. And that's why at the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned that this is overdue, although we're not in that. Cool. Thank you for the
I
clarification.
mean, we do planning and down to these growth planning exercises down to the decimal in terms of numbers for population, impact of numbers, dollar figures for improvement projects. But it's all based on forecasting out 20 years. So we're trying to apply exact science to a very inexact scientific process. So it is recommended that you go in and, evaluate these plans every 5 to 10 years. We just haven't been able to keep up with that standard here in McMinnville, but I know internally as staff, we've talked about how that will always be our recommendation on these new plans moving forward.
Any other questions? Okay.
All right, well, we got 2 more sections, and then we'll take a little deep dive on volume to capacity, because I know all you enjoy that.
Because it's so much fun.
All right, so I worked with Jeff and just wanted to give you guys a little bit of, what's happened since the last TSP. So, all these roads, but just give you a sense, it's a lot, but it's not a lot. So you look on that, you have basically 10 decent-sized projects, and that's where going back, it's very critical. If you look at the development that's happening, while you've had slow growth, the development has probably put in, as much or maybe more infrastructure in that same period. So it is a joint process here, and we have to understand that as we go through it. But just wanted to give that kind of as a snapshot of what's been done and what hasn't been done, and there's more projects on that list. I don't know, Jeff, anything else to add to that?
I'm going to add one quick thing, just to sort of prime the pump for some decision-making. Jeff and I were talking about this earlier today. So currently, our process is to, when we bring land into the city into our UGB for urban development, we can be looking at roads that circumvent the boundaries right now and just bringing into the center line. So Hill Road is a perfect example of this. So when we went forward to do the Hill Road improvement project on the north side of 2nd Street, we improved the eastern edge of Hill Road with sidewalks and things of that nature. The western edge of Hill Road actually isn't in the city, so we didn't improve that. Many cities take it all the way to the edge of the road so that you can build that road to a city standard on both sides. That's going to be one of the discussions we'll bring forward to you as policymakers as well as the county to talk about how we're going to work through those processes. We've also brought land into the city into the city that's adjacent to roads that are still considered county roads. So you'll see, if you look at our boundaries, Riverside is a great example of this for Riverside Drive, where the boundary comes in, and for the right-of-way of Riverside Drive, it comes in like this and then out, and Riverside Drive's still sitting in the county, but the land around it's in the city, meaning that that street's not going to be built to a city standard. And that's a very difficult planning process. So all those little things will be sort of examples of decisions that we'll be making as we go through this process.
All right. Just a little bit of the decision-making process for both the public and you all. So we have public engagement that advises our advisory committees. The advisory committees advise the project management team, which manages the project and then recommends a draft plan for planning commission hearing. So just a reminder on this process. So when that plan comes to the planning commission, there's really kind of three actions. You can recommend as is to the city council for approval, you can recommend with changes, or you can send it back to staff and say, try again. When it goes to city council, same thing. They can approve it as is, they can approve it with changes, or they can revert it back for further consideration through that process. But once you come through that, you have a legislative action, and thus you amend your comp plan with the adoption of a new TSP, which will then make the 2010 no longer applicable, and everything will be dictated from that new TSP at that point. All right, we've talked about all of this. I will hit maybe the third bullet. As we talk about funding, when we come back in October, there's other things. There's local gas tax. You can up your SDCs. You can have road utility fees and increase those. We'll be talking about those, but those are going to be kind of the tough decisions that you'll have to kind of grapple with. So either, like Heather said, you change the performance standard, and as Heather said, you guys have adjusted to 0.9. There's a lot of cities that are at 0.95 or 0.99. And we'll talk about that in a second. That's one way. You just live with more congestion. So it's going to be a balancing act, and that's where we'll be coming back throughout the process for guidance and provide recommendations in those areas. So key decision points, and where we'll come back and kind of want to get feedback, obviously that vision and goals. We'll come back and talk about that. That future transportation network will have members from the Planning Commission and the City Council on the advisory committees as kind of representatives from that standpoint. Talk about ultimately the magnitude and type of projects to include in the CIP. So that will be kind of an ongoing discussion. How we're going to fund things. What is that philosophy? Is it a user philosophy? How do we fund different areas? Some communities, Happy Valley, for instance, they have a few different SDCs. So the new areas have a higher SDC because they're obviously impacting the community, but there's also a lot of new infrastructure within those areas. So that's a thing. There's pros and cons to that, obviously, but those are some of those philosophies that we'll be looking at. Policy direction on multimodal development and future growth comes back to the comment, do we need 8-foot sidewalks, 12-foot sidewalks, et cetera. Some of that prioritization criteria, and then ultimately the adoption is the critical piece. Once that's set, that allows you to go after funding and allows you to then implement that vision going forward, both through private development and capital improvements. Any questions on how that TSP will be used or the decision making? All right, we're down to 4 slides, so that's good.
We're good.
Okay. All right, so schedule roughly 2 years. I didn't want to give you a bar chart tonight, but we're going to go kickoff background. Next will be the goals and objective and evaluation framework this fall, along with starting to get that existing conditions completed. Future conditions will start late this year, and that'll go into first quarter of next year. Community engagement will go throughout, but that's where you'll really see it kick into higher gear is as we get into 2027, when there's something to show people and for them to react, develop those alternatives and those solutions, prioritize, and then a draft TSP as we get into 28, public review, refinement, and then adoption process in 28. So, roughly 2 years start to finish on this process as we go through. And we've hit on a few of these things, but next steps, obviously, staff will want to get feedback from this section. Staff is starting to work on those advisory committees. We'll get those together. And then, as I mentioned, the technical review, start the public engagement, and then we'll come back in October and then at multiple points throughout the process from that standpoint. All right. Staff, any other questions before we jump into VC, or any other questions from Planning Commission or City Council?
I don't see any.
All right, so I heard,
Sorry, missed you, Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. When do you start, and how extensive is the data collection as far as activity on streets and?
are you volunteering? It'll be pretty, you might see data collection. There's small little cameras that go up over the intersections and they just count the cars. But most motorists don't even notice it. So there's not going to be any disruption from that standpoint. The crash data, that's all recorded through the police department. So yeah, there won't be anything really physically happening in the community outside of us maybe walking and checking a few things out.
Like the hoses across the road, that's obsolete technology?
I think we have a few hoses.
few.
Well, actually, those are video too now.
Yeah, we actually, to make sure we captured the impacts of school, we went ahead and did a contract for all the traffic counts already, so they're already completed, so you didn't even notice them. So, but they went on for about a week back in May, and so we've already got the numbers that we're going to be able to use moving forward for this project.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any gaps in our existing TSP that we should be focusing on that we are not starting, or that we are starting from scratch?
Oh, I'll turn that to Heather and Jeff.
Yeah, so actually, I would say there's a couple of things. So traffic impact analysis standards is one. Obviously, you've picked that up through the Planning Commission. The current TSP gives a nod to the 3 Mile Lane area, but just a nod. It didn't really look at specific projects in there. And so we have identified that as an area that we want to study a little bit more closely. And then I would also say that what we described earlier as our effort to bring additional funds to put more effort into alternative trans planning, our bicycle and pedestrian planning chapters of the current TSP are probably more minimal than a lot of cities are doing right now.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add, we're talking about kind of more of a context-sensitive complete streets model for what happens when you're in a built environment. If you have a standard, it's a collector, it's supposed to be this much right away, it's supposed to have all these things, but there's already buildings or homes there. What are you going to prioritize? Are you going to make sure you still get your full sidewalk width, and then you'll cut back on roadway shoulder? Is it bike lanes that we want to prioritize? Is it something that takes away from all three? And hopefully the plan from that will help from an engineering standpoint when we're going through these planning processes of what exactly we're going to install in more of that built environment when we have more limited right-of-way.
Yeah, and I guess I would say a great example of that is Second Street. So Second Street from Adams out to whatever the furthest west street is at this point, I don't know. But that's considered a minor arterial. So it's meant to be built as 2 lanes with a center turn lane, so much like Baker Creek Road. But if you think of Second Street from Adams to more or less Cypress, or as you come up over the hill there, it's a built environment right up against the right-of-way right now, and we don't have the right-of-way for a minor arterial. So we're always struggling when someone comes in with an infill project along that aspect of Second Street. Do we take the dedicated right-of-way for thinking that it will become a 3-lane road in the future somehow by everything redeveloping along there? And based on what's in the TSP right now, that's the direction, but that doesn't make sense because more than likely that part of Second Street's not going to redevelop in its entirety. So having some guidance on how we work through those types of development projects would be great.
Any other questions? I don't see any.
All right, our last slide, and hopefully, maybe exciting, we'll see. We'll give you guys a little bit of traffic engineering 101 tonight. So one of the things that the traffic engineering industry, and I'm a traffic engineer, so I can blame myself, but when they developed level of service back in the late 70s and early 80s, and then kind of refined what we have today in the early 90s, they assigned letter grades to it, A through F. And everybody, including all of us, is like, you know, I know A in school is a good thing, and F is a bad thing, and D's aren't really good either, and I don't know where E's are. I didn't see that in any of my high school classes. But what those thresholds were is, go back to the 1970s. We have, as a country, we have quite a lot of money. The gas tax is actually able to build. We're in the interstate area. We've almost finished the interstate area. So we're kind of flush with cash at that point as a country, because interstates are winding down and we got all this extra money. So the thresholds were based on average control delay. So on that instance there on the two-way stop control, if you're going, let's say north is to the top of the screen, if you're coming up to that stop sign, you have to decelerate, you have to stop, and you have to stay stopped, and then you have to accelerate and go through all that time. So if I could drive through that intersection at 25 miles an hour and not stop, that's zero control delay. If I have to decelerate, stop, wait, accelerate, all that time is control delay. So when you hear Jeff say there's a two-way stop and it has level of service F, that means there's greater than 50 seconds of control delay. So not even a minute of time. Now, to us, that seems like a long time when you're sitting at that stop sign, 50 seconds. But it's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. So not only is that difficult, so just we'll put that 1 second. So that signalized intersection, we measure it different. So on the unsignalized, we measure the worst movement. So is it the southbound stop sign or the northbound stop sign? Which one of those has the worst delay? And we call that the critical movement. So let's say the northbound has 100 vehicles and the southbound has 50. The northbound is going to be the control one. And if it has greater than 50 seconds, we report that intersection as level of service F. Okay? May not make a lot of sense in today's sense, but that's, as a planning commission, city council, you got to realize that's what we're measuring. Doesn't mean the intersection is in failure. It just means it is past a threshold of delay. Okay? On the signalized intersection, we do it a little bit differently because signals are more complex, and the engineers really wanted to make this a little bit complex. Is we average the delay across all movements at the intersection, so totally different approach from that standpoint. And we say if there's more than 80 seconds of average control delay, again, decelerate, stop, wait, accelerate on all those different approaches, if all those average up to 80 or more seconds, that is level of service F. Now, most signals that you go through, especially even here when it's congested, you're generally going to wait about a minute or two because the signals out here, I think, are on 90-second cycles. So you're generally, if you just got caught at the beginning of the red, you're going to sit there for probably 30 seconds anyways. And then if you're in the back of the queue, you're going to probably take another 20 seconds to get up there. So, you know, some of these intersections, you get 50 seconds just by being there, yet alone is that failure. So because of that, a lot of cities are starting to move away from delay-based. You know, it makes sense, but that level of service, people just say when it's F, it's like F is bad, we can't have F. But F doesn't relate to safety, it doesn't relate to the intersection being at capacity, it just relates to that delay. So the VC, or the volume to capacity that Heather mentioned, we're gonna take you deep. How many math majors did we have? All right, history majors, you're in for a ride. So let's see how we go here. So there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, okay? 3,600, okay? So if we look at an intersection and we just went out here on Baker and we turn the light green and we just let as many cars that can run through, per lane, I can get about 1,800 cars through per hour. So about 2 seconds between cars. So divide 3,600 by 2, that's 1,800 cars. So I can get 1,800 cars through that. Problem is, the people on the other street on Second, they're going to be a little ticked off if we just keep that light green all the time. So we have to spin it around. It goes yellow, it goes red, and that kind of chews away from that 1,800 vehicles that we can get through the intersection, because the light has to turn red, everybody has to stop, and then Second Street goes. So long story short is, if you have that signalized intersection up there and we have one lane in all the approaches, we can get roughly 1,400 cars through that intersection an hour, and they can be rights, they can be lefts, but we can get 1,400 through in an hour. That's all we can get through, and that is basically a volume to capacity ratio of 1. It's 100% of what we can get through there. So if you see it over 1, somebody's not getting through in that hour. They're going to be waiting into the next hour. So when Heather says 90%, we're basically saying we want to design that for about 1,250 cars roughly, and have a little bit of freeboard, about 100, 150 vehicles worth of freeboard at that. That sounds good, and if you can afford it, that's great. But if you can't afford it, you're like, well, maybe I'll live with 1,400. I don't want to go worse than that, but I'll live with that. That would change. You know, we may come to you guys with a project list, like Heather said, of 50 projects, and if we change the VC from 0.9 to 0.99, that list may drop to 30 projects. So that's one way to deal with this fiscal reality, is just live with more congestion and delay. Now, when an intersection gets to capacity, the unsignalized intersections, when they get to capacity, it does relate a little bit to a safety thing, because if you waited there for 2 or 3 minutes and there's somebody behind you honking, you might take a shorter gap, and that's when you might get hit. So for unsignalized intersection, we don't really care about the delay, but we do care about if we're getting over a 1.0 of capacity at that unsignalized movement, because either we need to signalize it, or we got to restrict the movement to right in, right out, or something different. We don't want people trying to get out of there from that standpoint. On the signalized intersections, the VC, all that means is people are going to start queuing and backing up, just like they do here on Second. They back up a few blocks or several blocks. That in and of itself isn't a safety issue. Where the safety issue comes in, and this comes into a policy standpoint, and that's what the third graphic is how you deal with your queues and your access management. So where do you allow driveways, and where do you space those? So, Jeff will come in and say, hey, we don't want a driveway within 200 feet of this intersection. And the developer's like, well, we need it. We can't develop without that driveway. And then you guys are put in that sticky thing. You want the development, but your city engineer is saying, well, you can't. The reason is that's where the safety implications come, is that queue backs up. And then, as I always like to say, the nice grandmother, she waves you through. She's like, she holds short and waves you through, but she doesn't stop the car next to her that comes through and, oh, there's your T-bone. That's where the safety part of having an intersection at capacity or over capacity comes in play. It's not being at capacity or over capacity. It's how you manage access upstream of that, and do you have turn pockets that are long enough? So you've seen this where there's a turn pocket, a left turn pocket, backs up, and then it backs into the through lane. So that's where you can get a high rear end type of collision. That and that access in and around intersections, that's where the safety thing is. So you can't directly relate level of service delay to safety. There's not really anything there. Volume and capacity, there is a relationship, but it's a relationship of how long the queue is, and then is there any access, or is there a storage lanes deficiency within that? If you have plenty of storage and you have no access, you'll have a safe intersection. Cars will just sit there, but it'll be safe. If you have a lot of access, and this used to be where you had, 4 gas stations around the corner with 2 driveways each, that's where you run into a lot of crashes from that standpoint. So back to Heather's point, one of the things we'll be coming back to as a policy standpoint is, if we change that policy, how does it change the project list? Are we willing as a community to live with a little bit more delay or a little bit more congestion? But then we'll probably also come back with some access management standards that say, yeah, that 200 feet or that 400 feet of access spacing at this location is necessary. And that's where the tough decisions come. Nobody likes saying no to a developer or no to that, but maybe they have to rotate their building around and have their access off a different street for that. So those are going to be the policy decisions that you're going to run into. Unfortunately, you're not going to run into them when we're adopting the TSP per se. It's going to be that next development in 2028 that comes in and wants a driveway within 100 feet of an intersection. That's where it'll come to play. All right, you guys learned something tonight? History majors, you stayed up with me on that? 36 to 1800, that's pretty good math, so. All right, that's all we got.
Okay. Any other questions before we close? Oh, Counselor Chenoweth?
Thank you, Mayor. On volume to capacity ratios, is that a blanket across the whole city that we set, or can we set it based on the type of road?
You can do that. One of the things you have to balance, some communities have done that, but there's driver expectation. So you have to just, if you're in different parts of the community, you have kind of different performance, got to be balanced with that. But yeah, if you wanted better performance on, a set of streets and then everything else can be VC1, that's a policy decision that can be made.
Thank you.
Counselor, excuse me, let's go to Commissioner.
That's fine. The threshold of delay that you mentioned, where does that metric come from? Is that just a sort of an industry standard?
It's the Highway Capacity Manual. That's a publication of the Transportation Research Board, which is part of the National Academy of Sciences. So it's a federal document.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Counselor Geary, did you have a question?
I just had not on VC, just on the TSP overall, is that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. Overall, as we're not the only community that's doing this, we're not the only state that's doing this, everyone's got to look at how they move people around or how people move around all the time. Oregon specifically, and maybe our area, zeroing back down, are we, as a culture, moving in a more vehicular space or a less vehicular space? Or maybe that's a leading question. What's the future of transportation as we look to plan the future of people moving around?
Yeah, I think Oregon, you go back to the early 70s, we bought in to the urban growth boundaries land use approach, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. What that did, and I'll compare, because a lot of us snowbirds will go down to Arizona. Arizona doesn't have urban growth boundaries. You go and they just keep going and going. But what that density does is it helps promote those other modes, because you have a smaller footprint. I mean, if there was not an urban growth around McMinnville, it would have spread further than it has over the last almost 50 years now. So from that standpoint, Oregon is more receptive and proactive on the multimodal fronts and on the transit fronts. The piece that we have an Achilles heel is two things, is our tax structure. And nobody likes taxes, but the lack of a sales tax really has bind us, along with our property tax, with the Measure 5. And I was just in Salem last week. Here's an instance. The 3 counties around Austin, Texas, their transportation budget is 6 times ODOT's transportation budget. That's just 3 counties, and Texas has, I think, 150 counties. So we have to figure out how, as a society here in Oregon, we're going to fund transportation, because the way in which we're relying on a gas tax that is not a regressive tax, it's just a tax that's not giving us the purchasing power. We're going to have to find a different thing. Now, you saw tolling. Tolling may come back, but right now, the fiscal reality is hitting us, and we're basically only able to barely maintain our facilities, yet alone build anything. So that's the constraint Oregon has right now. We have a good land use policy. We don't have a good funding policy right now in place.
And I would say, following up on that, I think, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think over the last 10 years, cities have really started focusing on alternative transportation infrastructure. It's less expensive because it's not as big. And it's another means of getting your community members around in your community. And so for McMinnville, we're not very large geographically. And so there's a great opportunity here to really think about how do we get people from point A to point B in McMinnville in a way that is not in a car? And is that less expensive than building these larger improvements just for vehicles? And we'll be walking through all those discussions. But I know in Central Oregon, they made a very cognizant push towards building sort of multi-use paths, so bike ped paths to connect cities, to also, I know that's tough to say here, but to connect different communities and to connect points A and B as a means of saving money in terms of investments in transportation infrastructure.
Very good.
Okay, any other questions? Do you have one? Okay, Commissioner Mudrick.
And with, kind of in the same vein, would a lot have to change in terms of city funding and priorities in order to maintain that 5 to 10 year cycle of, reevaluating? Is this something that is generally plausible?
Yeah, that's definitely plausible. One, these updates, they become more true updates than a full redo. So they're more cost effective when you're doing that every 5-year standpoint. We could be much better at applying for TGM grants and things like that to help offset the costs moving forward. And a 5-year update standard is pretty standard across. So even if you only get one for every other, that's still pretty helps with the cost quite a bit.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, seeing no additional questions and nothing else from the three of you? Okay, I'm going to close the work session at 6:41. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Oops, good evening. It's 7 o'clock on July 28th, 2026. I'd like to call the city council meeting to order and ask Claudia to do a roll call.
Counselor Chenoweth,
Here.
Counselor Benner,
Here.
Counselor Geary,
Good evening.
Counselor Cunningham,
Here.
Counselor Tukolsky,
I'm last and I love it. Thanks.
Council President Peralta is absent this evening, Mayor Morris.
Here. If you're able to stand, please stand and join me in the pledge. Now it's time for public comment. Any interested audience members are invited to provide comments, and any comment provided that requires some type of follow-up will be assigned to a staff member. Excuse me. Anyone may speak on any topic other than a matter in litigation, a land use decision that is or will be in front of the city council, or a matter scheduled for public hearing at a future date. Comments will be limited to 4 minutes per person for a total of 32 minutes. I'm not done.
Your time is up.
If you are on Zoom and wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature or chat feature and send a chat to the city recorder team. You will need to provide your contact information prior to being promoted to speak. Once your turn is up, we will announce your name and unmute your mic. So first, we're going to start with those that have signed up prior.
First, we have Michael Saber.
Mr. Saber. Yes, and just make sure the green light is on the microphone. Just push, if it's red, push it and it'll turn green. And then state your
Very good.
name and the city you live in.
Michael Sauber, McMinnville.
Okay.
Thank you, all public servants here. It's sometimes a thankless job, and I appreciate all that you do. I'm not here to accuse or blame anyone here. I'm here to come to a solution that we can literally live with. I live on East Grand Haven Street, where we experience vehicles and motorcycles driving way too fast over the posted 25-mile-per-hour speed limit with modified exhaust, booming sound system roaring through the neighborhood every day and every night, vibrating our walls. We feel harassed and traumatized by the noise. It's unsafe driving and walking in the neighborhood. We hear vehicles roaring and screeching on 99 constantly. This is about human and traffic safety and respect. Children play in our neighborhoods, as they should. Homeowners who have purchased and pay taxes on their homes should be able to enjoy a life free from the assault by individuals who either don't give a damn about anyone else or by ignorant teens who just don't realize what havoc, harm, or serious danger they are causing. We are sleep deprived and suffering daily from the situation. 2 Sundays ago at 3:30 in the morning, 2 muscle cars revving their engines, spinning their tires, racing each other back and forth on 99 After hearing it for the third time, I finally got out of bed and called dispatch and told them where the racing was coming from. I then saw one go by our house and recognized it as one we had previously reported for speeding through our neighborhood. An officer came to our house and I described the vehicle to him. He was familiar with it. He found them and talked to them. Really, it would have been nice if he was fined and the vehicle impounded. It's a reckless driving is a Class A misdemeanor, a very serious offense. I posted my concerns on Nextdoor social media and got 42 responses and 2,400 views. 2,400 people realize we have a serious problem. State Oregon code had reckless driving, careless driving, causing unreasonable noise with vehicle, unreasonable sound amplification. McMinnville has codes on vehicle noise and sound amplification devices. Some of the responses I got on social media Nextdoor was concerned about the school zone. 2 kids on motorcycles passing cars. It's a racetrack, even through a school zone. It's so loud. I stood in the road and told her to slow the hell down. We need a bigger police presence. Screeches down the street doing at least 60. Not sure how to proceed, but this has to stop. An animal or child will get hit one day. They need to be fined, licenses suspended, vehicles impounded, and hold the parents accountable. Let's start throwing stuff at their cars from the bushes. I'm sick and tired of the noise and speeding constantly. They were going too fast to get a license number. This is McMinnville. Those were just some of the comments. If this continues, angry citizens might start taking the issue into their own hands with potentially serious consequences. Is this constant aggressive noise and speeding the image we want McMinnville to be known for? I hope not. We need help to uphold the laws, and I would like to see a few things here. Rent or purchase speed detecting cameras to automatically catch and fine speeders and noise violators.
Mr. Saber, your time is up, but I'm going to ask that Chief Wood connect with you and talk to you about some of those things, okay?
Okay.
And so he'll get your information from our city recorder, okay?
Okay, thank you very
for
much.
speaking.
Next, we have Sharon Fenwick.
Hi.
Sharon Fenwick, McMinnville. I just moved to the, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Chegwin Park area. And I was walking my cat across right where Grand Haven turns into Burnett. I'm coming from the park, going home. So walking across Burnett, Grand Haven. And I didn't hear any noise beforehand. And right at that intersection, there's a steep curve with bushes. So I can't see around it, but I didn't hear anything. So I walked with my cat in her locked pet stroller across the street, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Rah!" And here comes this truck barreling toward me, and if I didn't run, he would have hit me if I didn't finish running. And I am disabled and have some mobility issues. So I made it across the street, but by the time I looked at him, he was so far down Burnett. It was a small red or brown truck, so it was too far away for me to get a license plate. Speeding, I don't know how fast he was going, well over 25. I just moved to this area from Northeast 27th and McDaniel at Town Center Apartments. And so I crossed 27th a lot. And I would like to ask, first of all, for something to be done about the speeding. I agree with Michael Sauber's proposals for the cameras, for fines, for impounding of cars. So when I lived at Town Center, I would cross at Northeast McDaniel, where there's no crosswalk and needs to be. And there's a care facility down the road between McDonald and McDaniel. There is a disabled apartment complex right next to mine. And there are kids walking home from school. So there's kids, there's elderly, there's disabled crossing 27th. Multiple times, cars have been speeding down through there with absolutely no regard to any pedestrians or other. They're going to hurt other drivers or pedestrians. And so something needs to be done, at least at the corner of McDaniel and 27th, and something needs to be done about these cars. Plus, I hear them at night with their loud boom boxes vibrating my windows of my apartment. I hear their loud engines or exhausts, whatever that vehicle sound is, that loud rumbling. It's very stressful to live with. And I thank you for hearing my comments, and I'd like something to be done and any rules that are already in place to be enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll add your name to Chief Wood over there. Thank you.
Next, we have Frank Phillips.
Hi.
Like Michael said, thank you all for serving. Yeah, I know it's a,
And have you get a little closer to the microphone so we can
okay,
hear you.
how about now?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I've lived here about 4 years, almost to date. I've lived in Oregon 54 years. The present issue is the speeding vehicles, excessive vehicle noise in the Grand Haven, Coburn Drive area. I live on Coburn. What is presented this issue years ago, 28 years ago, was when the subdivision was being built. They had allowed Grand Haven to be larger and designed it to handle the through traffic from several adjacent subdivisions. It was blocked by a landowner who wanted to keep his property on Grand Haven Street. The solution became reroute traffic along a smaller street with not designed to handle the traffic volume was Northeast Coburn decided. A try by the city to slow these cars down on our street. They posted a 25-mile-an-hour sign and put up a meter that people could see the speeds that they were traveling, but there was no enforcement that followed up with any of that. It was just a warning sign. I'd like to see a 25-mile-an-hour posted sign on Northeast Coburn eastbound as well as westbound, and radar enforcement by our local police officers whenever that's possible, and I know they're busy. Having been a police officer for traffic enforcement for the city of Oakland many, many years ago, I understand how busy police are. We need stop signs at the end of the intersection of Northeast Coburn, along with a stop line on the pavement. We need a stop sign posted on northbound Wagoner Drive with a crosswalk also there. The stop signs would really help with slowing this traffic down. They come to the intersection and they look both directions while they're still moving. And you're making a decision of which way you're going on the move and trying to see if somebody's coming towards you with a vehicle. Portland has a radar tracking ticketing system, and also they have an excessive noise system. They can be cited for loud mufflers or speeding, and the tickets routed to them. It doesn't employ any police officers at the time, and it seems to be a fairly decent solution. There's a lot of revenue involved. Let's see. Oh, Sherwood has intersection controls with camera sighting capacities. And if you're driving through there, notice that the speed limit is 45 and traffic is actually traveling at 45. People are well aware of the traffic cameras, and they have slowed, so it's effective. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We made some notes, so we'll, between all of us, we'll take a look at it and see what the city is able to do. Okay? Thank you.
Next, we have Ken Rolfe.
Hi, Ken.
Appreciate your time this evening. So I will echo the comments that have previously been made. I live in the same neighborhood. I'm actually on the south side of the street, 3 houses down from Michael, who spoke previously. I would echo the same comments. The excessive speed, the noise are ongoing issues. I've lived on that street since 2001, actually before Coburn even, before Grand Haven went through. And ever since that time, and I'm not sure exactly when that was, maybe 04, 05, when the road was punched through, this has been an ongoing issue. So the complicating issue for me is on the corner of Northeast Grand Haven Street and Coburn, there's a car, a full-size truck and trailer that park there routinely that block the view from vehicles traveling eastbound on Grand Haven. So it's a finite number. It's primarily people that live on that end of the street, but it's also weekend garage sale seekers and people that are lost and go down and turn around. That probably creates even more of an issue because they're not familiar with the neighborhood. And because of the blocked view at Coburn and Grand Haven, people routinely do the California stop or just blow through that stop sign. So if you're not really paying attention, there's near misses consistently. And I can attest to that because it's probably on a weekly basis, I'm nearly T-boned. And that's even knowing the situation and kind of tiptoeing around the car looking, and still people come flying around that corner and there's near misses. So it's an ongoing issue. I've reported it. I've tried back, 5-10 years ago, I was down to the city police trying to make reports and looking at options, didn't really get anywhere, unfortunately. I appreciate Michael kind of bringing this issue back to the forefront. I certainly, agree that it's an issue, it's an ongoing problem. My proposal, probably in the most cost-efficient way would be to just simply add 2 more stop signs. So you'd have a 3-way stop. So you'd have a stop sign on Grand Haven heading east, you'd have a stop sign on Grand Haven heading west, and then the current stop sign on Coburn. That would at least get all 3 lanes of traffic to slow down. And that would be, I think, probably most cost efficient, but the other, the radar signs and some of those things might also be viable options. So anyway, I know you've heard this now 4 times, and again, it is an issue, and it's been an issue for 15 plus years, maybe longer. So I'm certainly hopeful that maybe we can put our heads together collectively and come up with some solutions.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's everyone that signed up.
Was there anybody else in the Civic Hall that wanted to speak? Thank you. We had nobody on Zoom or phone? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that spoke. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our presentations. Police presentation, Chief Cord Wood.
Becky, can I have you come up, please? And Officer Huey, could you come up, please? Every once in a while, a very good thing comes from a very small call. Earlier this year, a few months ago, Officer Huey took a call for service related to some missing iPods. Somebody reported their iPods missing, and with technology, you can track those to where they live now, and he was able to track those down, thinking that we would find someone had stolen a set of iPods that were left unattended. Well, when Officer Huey arrived, he found some young men in the act of creating posters to help make sure that those iPods found their way back to their rightful owners. And through that process and a desire to recognize some young people for doing the right thing and doing a good thing, Officer Huey and Becky forged a new partnership between Serendipity Ice Cream and the McMinnville Police Department. So I'd like to recognize them tonight for what they did. So we have a new program at McMinnville Police. It's called Caught Being Sweet. And so if a McMinnville police officer catches a young person doing the right thing, we have the opportunity to give them a business card, and they can take that card to Serendipity Ice Cream, and they can get themselves a free ice cream. So it's an amazing partnership. It reflects, kind of reflects what McMinnville's about, right? Partnerships and making things work and recognizing people when they're doing the right thing. So I would like to recognize the two of you for the creation of this partnership with the McMinnville Police Department Challenge Coin. Oh, wait. Wrong one. That's you. So, thank you.
Fabulous, thank you both. That's great.
Chief Wood, can I keep these?
You're not sweet.
All right, so next we're going to move on to Ballard King and Associates presentation, and I'd like to call on City Manager Adam Garvin to present our topic.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening we have Erica Dunn on Zoom. Ken had a scheduling conflict, but Ken did prepare the presentation this evening that Erica will run through.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me back tonight. I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person. So I will share my screen. Oh, I think I need that to be turned on. There we go. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So we last talked with you 2 weeks ago. And in that presentation, you had a little bit of feedback for us as well as a couple of questions. So the feedback really was the preferred option is the 8-lane stretch pool with community room and retractable bleachers. There was a request that maybe some additional deck space would be necessary, particularly for competitions, and wanting to make sure that it wasn't any less than what you have at your current aquatic center. And then there was a question raised around sort of annual maintenance cost of a bulkhead. So Ken did let us know that that can really vary based on the specific bulkhead that you select, as well as how often it gets moved, et cetera. But he said, a good estimate is around $5,000 a year for a maintenance cost around that bulkhead. So we'll run through this presentation, and the last piece of it is the operations plan that Ken has put together. So this is where we were when we last met. So this is the 8-lane, 25-yard stretch pool that includes the community room and retractable bleachers and had a total project cost of about $88.76 million. And this is assuming a May 2027 bond. When we looked at the building relative to the existing aquatic center to understand overall deck space, we found that we were consistent with the existing aquatic center, except for on the side with the diving section. And so in that area, we looked and saw that we had 12 feet clear from the backside of the diving, and then your existing facility has 22 feet. So we put together an option that looks at increasing that area to that match that 22 feet and adds about 1,050 square feet of gross deck area. We also looked at adding additional locker space along sort of that corridor that is coming in off of the service court. So we now have about 100 lineal feet of storage lockers along that for kids when they are on deck for their competitions. Altogether, that added about 700 gross square feet. So we were able to make some adjustments where we removed some square footage in certain areas and to put it back into the stretch pool area. Without losing any program space. So all of your program spaces have stayed the same. That added about $840,000 overall cost. So we're looking at a total project cost now of about $89.6 million, again, based on that 2027 bond. And then the operational plan that goes along with this. So this is similar to a chart that we shared a few weeks ago, based on that original base plan that we had been looking at. It's a similar chart with a few things that have changed. One is that the 26 amended budget, that is looking at sort of what you are currently expending in a combination of the aquatic center, the community center, a portion of your rec sports, and a portion of the Parks and Rec admin budgets combined. So that looks at your expenses, your revenues, and what that difference is, and that your recovery is at about 28%. That was then amended to be what you would be paying in 2030. And so you can see those numbers in the next column. And that's one thing that we changed. Previously, we had been looking at 2029, but with a May of 27 bond, that would push out about another year. And so the new rec center budget with the increased, with the 8-lane stretch pool with additional deck space, you are looking at expenses in the $4.1 million range and revenue in the 2.5, with a difference of about 1.68. So not that much increase, about $50,000 more per year for that additional pool area in this option, with a 60% recovery rate. So as you can see, it's still quite a bit under what the subsidy would be if you were to go along as you currently are with the spaces that you have in using those. And then the difference to the 26 amended budget, that shows you're at about $117,000 difference between those two, and then the $506,000 is the difference between what you would currently be paying in 2030 for your existing facilities, rather than the rec center. We'll come back if people have questions on that one. And then this just pulls everything together to show that overall total project cost of roughly $89.6 million, and your cost recovery at 60%, with the subsidy being about $1.68 million. And that is really the bulk of tonight's presentation, so quite simple. I don't know if there are any specific questions that folks have.
Was this sent out to us?
That I'm not sure. I think Adam, we shared it with Adam.
Yeah, I sent it out this evening. It should be in the top of your inbox.
I see it now. And Adam, I had asked originally about 8 and 5, and you were going to explain at this meeting. I thought somebody was going to explain the cost difference and why that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, let me pull that up for you. So with soft costs to go from an 8-lane to a 10-lane, you'd be looking at about $2.75 million. And then that's the additional capital needed to build that. But then you also have the operational, ongoing operational costs of that. And Ken estimated that.
Did you say 8 to 10? So are you?
Going from an 8-lane to a 10-lane.
Yeah, I want 8, 5.
8 and 5, yeah. I have a few different, so an 8-lane with 5 warm-up lanes, the additional operation cost would be $65K a year to the subsidy that we need to be coming out of the general fund. A 10-lane with 5 warm-up lanes would mean an additional $135,000 a year. And then that capital need is a little bit under 3 million to make those types of changes to the plan.
3 million more to add the 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have a question.
Counselor Tukalski?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a bit confused why we're discussing 8 versus 10. In this case, I thought we had decided on 8 last time.
We did, but I had asked prior to the last meeting for for how much an 8x5 is.
Oh, the difference.
And I just was going to be told the cost at this meeting.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
And so I hadn't been told yet.
Thank you.
To know what it was.
The other thing that you had asked about, Mayor, was or that had been asked, was wet side versus dry side costs. Right now, the wet side of the building is about 52% of the cost, but it's only encompassing about 46% of the area. So the budget is weighted towards the wet side.
Sounds normal, that it would be.
Yeah, the wet side's at about $1,145 a square foot at this concept level. Obviously, when we get into design, you can make those adjustments just like you can on the dry side to bring the cost down or raise the cost for either one of those. But that's how it currently plays out at this high level discussion.
Just a question too, and that might come later, but based on cost, I'm kind of thinking you probably talked about it, is the depth of the pool? Has that been talked about?
You know,
To
it has
make
not,
the-
and I don't actually have that number.
Okay, just curious.
The actual depth of the comp pool hasn't been talked about. The depth of the rec pool has been talked about, from making sure it's a zero entry to start from a accessibility and safety standpoint. Outside of that, the more water you have, the more expensive it's going to be to maintain with chemicals and infrastructure and mechanical load from the HVAC perspective and all those types of things.
But I think they're, having this is 18 foot and allows us to have scuba certification. We haven't had that conversation, but I think, maybe I'm speaking up for Pence at the table. Their number is driven off of pools that have routinely deep bodies of water. And so when their per square foot number they're assigning to us includes pools that are routinely that deep. So couldn't tell you what number that is. Maybe they could follow up, but it routinely does. The dollars they're giving us assume that those are pools of good depth.
Yeah, that's why I assume they probably had an idea, because they have to figure that for capacity. Excuse me, let me say Counselor Benner, not Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go through the cost and the sort of implications of the deck size increase? I've been flipping through those slides. Did it cascade into other parts of the building? It seems like a really big cost for 12 feet or whatever that is.
So it adds about 1,050 of deck space here. And what I would say is the natatorium is the most expensive part of the entire building. And it is somewhere in the $1,000 a square foot range for natatorium space. And so it does add quite a bit more. We were able to reduce some of the overall square footage by actually pulling in this group exercise room. You'll see, if I flip back and forth here between the previous, you can see there was some storage here and some aquatic storage here. We actually pulled this in, which pulled some of the area in around the service court entry to try and reduce some of that square footage in the natatorium. And you'll see that there was added storage out up on this end. So the aquatic storage moved to this end of the pool, and we now have storage for the group exercise space down here. So there was a little reconfiguring down here, and that's really the extent of it. And it really is just that the natatorium is very expensive space. And so we're a little less than 1,000 square feet because there isn't actually pool in that area, but it's a very high volume area, and the surface, the sort of building skin there is a very high-tech system to make sure that it doesn't rot and that it has longevity to it.
And that number for that, essentially the deck space increase was just short of $1 million?
Yes, it was about $840,000 altogether.
Thank you.
Counselor Gary?
What was the program advantage of 5 warm-up lanes versus 3 warm-up lanes?
Well, I just was wondering, because that is what Chehalem Newburgh has, and so they have water polo over there too, which I don't know if we'll ever have, but if they do, then it allows them to move the bulkhead and have polo and warm up at the same time. But I also asked if they use them all the time, because there was a concern they weren't being used, and they said they do for all the activities. Now, I'm not asking for that, but I at least wanted to know what we were looking at cost-wise, just because it is, they're also, when they're having a meet, closing down their rec side because they don't have enough deck space, and then they need their warm-up. So kind of looking at other places and what are their issues that they're having to deal with. And one of the main things we wanted to do was to separate the rec and the competition, so we didn't have to close down. So to me, it was important to have enough deck space that we don't have to close down the rec side. Jeannie, do you want to add anything? You may have experience at all this. Our new Park and Rec Director.
Thank you. Thank you. I've watched your last 2 work sessions for this, and Adam's been sharing the design with me. And I'd like to get more information from the McMinnville community and from you, council, also. And I'm planning to meet with the swim team and the swim board, and also with our school district. My experience in aquatics and working with a public pool facility is that we've just got to keep our minds on the aspect that this pool is a public facility for recreation, which means we have to look at multi-use. So I'm sure Erica can agree with me that we no longer build recreation amenities, including parks, pools, community centers, for one single use. We always do it for multi-use. So pools are now multi-used for lap swimmers, group exercise, pool therapy, swim lessons, and swim teams. So with all of those aspects, I may be leaving 1 or 2 user groups out there. We just need a way how we want to look at the budget, what we want to spend to accommodate each of those user groups. I've been looking at the seating and the deck space, and I think I need to talk more with Adam about that to before I give any professional opinion on that. Adam, is there anything else you want me to add from our discussions? As long as I think we're looking at all the user groups and what the cost is, Erica is correct, pools are very expensive, but now is the time to put in what you want for it too. And if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Just a clarifying question. You just made a comment about water polo. My understanding is the pool configuration we have now, I know we don't have water polo, but it would support it if we chose to do it. Not the pool configuration necessarily we have now, but the one we're this.
The proposed one.
Proposed one, thank you. Is theoretically supposed to be able to support water polo. Is that not correct?
It is correct. It would leave, I think, 1 lane, warm-up lane, is my understanding, is somewhere like that. Okay. I'm trying to do a bunch of research here.
Yes.
It's a lot of money, and I don't want to spend a lot of money and then regret that it doesn't work.
Exactly, that it's not utilized for the cost.
And I just want to clarify, we had some conversation at the last about how many people are on a deck. And I had a number, and then we had a number. And my number was closer, that it is a lot of people that can be on the deck during a meet, with parents, coaches, people waiting to swim. If you see the pictures of the swim team over there, there are a lot of kids.
That is correct, Mayor. And that's also up to the swim teams as they work together on how they want to utilize the gallery space, which is the seating, and the bleachers also. I've seen in different community centers, multiple ones where they have them come in at different times. They utilize the community room where the swimmers can wait, so they're not all on deck. And the other thing, it's really great to keep in mind is that as lifeguards who are still obviously on duty during any time that public pool is open, the more people are on deck, the more their job of scanning and keeping the facility safe, the more work it is for them. Not to say that they can't do that work, but typically we don't have big crowds on our decks specifically for that reason, for safety. I love that you all are putting a lot of seating in the gallery. I think that's going to help a lot. There's a lot of galleries and pools right now that are not ample for any size meets.
Yeah, and that's a concern because we talk about Lake Oswego had a pool and they are missing, they say deck space is what I've heard. And then talking to Newburgh, they love their pool, but still would like a little bit more space. So that's where I'm gathering my information, is trying to talk to those directors. But it's certainly up to the council here as a whole, what we want to do. Any other questions for Jeannie or Adam or our consultant? It's very quiet. Counselor Tukalski.
Yeah, I have a question. It's more on the financial side of things. If we're at 89.6 million for our proposal, have we figured out the dollars per thousand for a household yet? Have we done the math on that?
Your question is, what is the tax rate going to be dollars per thousand?
Yeah.
So that's going to come down to bond council. That would be a future meeting that we'd bring in the bond council experts, and that would be determined off the interest rate at the time or what they project it'll be, as well as all the other factors that go into it. So Katie and I engaged bond council in June, but it would all need to be, if we presented something right now, it would still need to be redone for May. So if that's something you guys want to do, we can re-engage them and get them on the council schedule so we can get them in front of you guys.
I would prefer that, because that's really what this comes down to, is how much is it going to cost per thousand? And that was...
Yeah, speculative numbers were lower than the last bond ask.
I hope so.
Just with rates and potential different timelines as well. But I don't want to put any of those numbers into the record. I would rather let the bond council do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
Sorry, Mayor.
Councilor Benner?
Thank you. From a programmatic matter, are we making a decision on that increase in deck, or we're just still in the gathering information stage?
City Manager Adam Garvin, are we just still gathering right now and can decide 100% later? Or do you need to, I think the price, like Councilor Tukalski said, is pretty important.
So we need to know the design so we can engage bond council with a bond number. So until we land on where you guys want to be here, we can't bring bond council in because they're going to be chasing a moving target.
It felt like the last meeting we had a consensus around an idea, but had more questions. Is this deck worth another $1 million? Does that decision get made later on, or are we making that tonight?
Tonight.
I guess.
Yeah, I guess to Councilor Benner's point, Mayor, is, are you guys good with the additional $1 million on the deck space? So you're at 89.6. And then are you wanting to go to 5 lanes from 3 warm-up lanes at an additional $3 million, or do you want that to be privately funded through the users, like swim team? And are you guys making a decision on that tonight?
I'm good with the 3 lanes myself. I just wanted the information to really know what the difference was. 3 million is probably more than I feel like we can afford, in my opinion. But I felt like it was important for me to know that. So Can I get opinions?
Counselor Chenoweth,
Chenoweth?
the look on your face, I'm implying like naming rights or something like that. So a private individual or group would come in and pay for that additional upgrade.
The Taco Bell warm-up zone. For what it's worth, I'm okay with it as it was presented and not incorporating the items that we talked about here.
Okay.
Just make sure I understand, so not doing the added deck.
Not doing the added deck and not doing additional 2 warm-up lanes, yeah. Keeping it at 8 lane 3 with the previous amount of deck space.
Counselor Cunningham?
I would say I'm good. Gosh, I do appreciate the added deck, but I think that it does add on to obviously to the total cost. So I think I would go with my fellow counselor Geary on that one. So, yep.
I'm good with the 8.3, but I do think we need the deck because we're not going to be able to add deck later. Counselor Tukalski?
Well, if we can give naming rights and, privately finance that, I would support it. But if we can't do that, then I don't support it because we already have people that are struggling to pay their bills today, and adding another $1 million to what we've already added as a community room and the warm-up lanes, we've already extended ourselves to what I believe is on the edge of reasonable. And while I would love to have the deck, I really do want it. I have people already telling me that they don't support this or they can't afford it. And it concerns me that it won't pass.
Counselor Chenoweth? All right. Counselor Benner?
I don't like the way this is going, but I have a hard, I don't know enough about swim to know how important that deck is. But from a sort of building perspective, I think the architect's right. We're adding square footage for kids to hang out, which cascades into the most expensive wall in the building. I can't see it making sense to me. I hope we don't live to regret that, but $1 million for that additional 12 feet, it's not going to generate any more revenue, and it's, so, no.
Okay. All right. If that's what you all feel, so they'll probably be hanging out in one of those other spaces. We'll need to rent that space. So, all right, everybody outvotes me, so that's fine. We're going to go without additional deck space and 8.3.
So this 88.76 design is what you guys are looking for?
Yeah.
The community room and the retractable bleachers?
Yes.
Okay. So Katie and I will work with bond counsel to get back in front of you guys with the $89 million bond ask.
Need anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, Eric.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie, for your input. Consent agenda. Would any counselor like to remove something from the consent agenda?
Before we start, I do want to make a correction on the consent agenda. For the OLCC, page 61 of the packet was updated to add some missing information that the application needed to have. The printed copy is on your dais, and that will be amended for the packet tomorrow. It's not information that would require us to withdraw the OLCC application. Is just internal items that the police department needed to add to it.
Okay, thank you. So would any counselor like to remove something from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to remove A, please.
Okay, so Counselor Chenoweth would like to remove A. Any additional items requested to be removed? Okay, so I have a motion to accept the consent agenda excluding A.
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Geary, a second from Counselor Benner. Any additional discussion? Claudia?
Counselor Chenoweth?
Aye.
Counselor Benner?
Aye.
Counselor Geary,
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham,
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky.
Aye.
The consent agenda minus item A has passed unanimously by a vote of 5-0.
Counselor Chenoweth, would you like to talk about A?
Yeah, I just would like to recuse myself since I wasn't at the meeting. And so the easiest way to do that was to remove it from the agenda so I can recuse on the one item. Or not recuse, abstain.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept item A?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Counselor Benner, a second from, is that Counselor Tukolsky?
That was me.
All right. Any additional discussion? Claudia?
Counselor Benner,
Aye.
Counselor Geary,
Aye.
Counselor Cunningham,
Aye.
Counselor Tukolsky.
Aye.
The draft minutes of the April 22nd, 2026 meeting have approved by a motion of 4-0 and 1 recusal.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on. We're going to go to advice and information items, reports from counselors and on committees and board assignments. And I'm going to start with HR Director Vicki Hedges.
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Chief Wood?
On July 20th, we had 3 new officers start with the McMinnville Police Department. We had a swearing in for Officer Bustamante, Officer Kwan, and Officer Bass. We're excited to have them on board. Officers Kwan and Bass will head to DPSST next week to start their academy training. And the only other thing from the police department is don't forget that next Tuesday is National Night Out, and we hope to see you there. And if you show up, I will personally paint your face.
City
I
Attorney David
have a roller with your name on it.
City Attorney David Lightberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing from the legal department tonight.
City Manager Adam Garvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I was out of town last week, so not a ton to report on, but had a stable table meeting with our stakeholder partners and Director Richards on the 16th. There's a McMinnville board meeting on the 15th with Counselor Geary. You'll probably have a more in-depth report on that. And other than that, I wanted to recognize that it's Jeannie's first week here. She started on Monday, yesterday, and happy to have her here as a new Park and Rec Director from Lincoln City. And then also acknowledge that our Library Director, Jenny Berg, who's gone this evening, is retiring. Her last day will be October 2nd. So if you see her around, be sure to thank her for her more than 25 years of service to the city, starting as a volunteer and working her way up to be a library director. Wish her well in retirement, and she'll still be around locally.
Thank you. IT Director Scott Burke.
Thanks, Mayor. Nothing for the council in this meeting, but we'll be talking after this one. Thank you.
Okay. City Recorder Claudia Cisneros.
Nothing for the council. Thank you.
City Councilor Scott Cunningham.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the Historic Landmarks Committee this last week, but they went over specifically getting down to the last little nuts and bolts of the demolition for a historic resource application. So, and that will be going to the planning department shortly, which will finally get signed off on us soon after that, I assume. So also what was talked about was a new kind of rules making that was coming from the LCDC about cultural area rule, and this specifically is in coordination, and have her correct me if I misspeak, but in coordination with tribal communities when there's certain things being done, digging up and excavation, as well as urban growth boundary moving. So that rules take effect January 1st, 2027. And of course, they are extensive and give us lots of direction, though, on how the state's also there to help us out. And in the Affordable Housing Committee, lots of positive discussion. We are really trying to push forward community land banking as an option. It's not something that we currently have, although Habitat has looked into it, and we are going to be inviting, I'm blanking on the name of the group, but they're from Eugene that does community land bank. And so we're hoping that that might be an option down the road, and that is a part of our the housing needs analysis and what we are doing to try to help with our lack of inventory. So that's what I got.
Counselor Chenoweth?
My meetings took the month off, so I've had a pretty light load, and I have nothing to report.
Okay. On July 16th, I joined Communications Manager Noelle Amaya, and we visited a few businesses downtown to let them know about the 150th birthday and to ask them to celebrate with us. So businesses are asked to have a promotion or an event that coordinates with the 150th birthday, whether it be connected to the numbers 150 or it be historical, or we'd like to have them join it. And then Noelle is keeping track of those and we're promoting them. So we're not asking for anything from them. We just want to promote businesses and have them join the celebration. Again, hopefully all the counselors have on your calendar October 17th. There is a parade for the birthday, and I would like all of you to be in it. So please be prepared. Put your calendars. My monthly business meetings, I monthly visit other businesses with the CEO, John Olson of the Chamber of Commerce. This month we went to Serendipity Ice Cream, Uncorked Treasures, Harvest Fresh Market and Deli, and Boersma Sewing Center. We try to spread out around the city, and this was downtown this time. Great visits. I enjoy those and take back little pieces that the city can work with or hear what's going well. I was a guest speaker at the Lions Club on the 22nd, and on the 23rd, the McMinnville Made Mayor's Tour, which is arranged by MEDP. It's a tour that we set up that we go to places where things are made in McMinnville. And we went to Laurel Crest, which is a leading manufacturer of scaled CGMP, which is a certified cannabinoid formula. It comes from hemp, and they remove the THC, and they provide that product in bulk to manufacturers. It was very interesting. Lastly, I just wanted to say I attended the two events the last 2 weekends in downtown, Mac Fresco, and had the art festival with it. It was fantastic. I was here all 3 days. We attended a portion of all 3 days. And this last weekend, Vintage in the Valley, which again closed down 3rd Street, and there was a lot of great people there and busy, and the retailers I spoke to and restaurants were really happy. So I'm glad to see that, and I hope we can continue that momentum. And then today I attended the ribbon cutting of the science lab at the Chemeketa Community College, the first project that was completed from the budget that passed last year. I'm done. Councilor Geary.
For the 150 parade, if you find a penny farthing bike, I can ride those, so I'd be happy to. It's the big bone shaker wheel. Anyway, the MSD long-range facilities on summer break still, so no meeting there. Visit McMinnville. We'll offer a little update on the lodging and hotel industry forecast. So in May, room night demands among McMinnville hotels rose 3% year over year. Hotel supply remains unchanged, which resulted in hotel occupancy increasing 3% compared to last May. Hotels averaged 63.2% occupancy for the month. However, average daily rate declined 8.8% compared to last May, dropping to $151. This notable drop in ADR offset the increase in demand, which resulted in about a 6% decline in hotel revenue, totaling $1.1 million in May. From the travel outlook remains solid despite rising inflation. So you're seeing some of the K-shaped economy there kick in. Very locally, in the Willamette Valley specifically, from Travel Oregon's monthly lodging statistics for May 2026, the Willamette Valley is at 63.9% occupancy, which is up 1%, and the ADR is $138. For what it's worth, the United States in that same period of time experienced overall 65.7% occupancy at an ADR of 169. So, but looking at the Willamette Valley more specifically is more important there. Aside from the data from Visit McMinnville, got to meet the new internal director of marketing, Tess, over there, who's excited to jump in and do good work. We got to go, afterwards I got to go take a look at, and I encourage everyone to go look at the new mural in the art alley. It's really beautiful, it's really cool. I won't ruin it, I just encourage you to walk down that alley. And again, that's between 3rd and 4th and Davis and Evans. It joins a whole bunch of alleys down there, which has some new wayfinding, and it's a really cool mural that got put in. And the website, the new website is nearly done and live. It exists, I'm not very tech savvy. It exists somewhere that they can look at and work through and troubleshoot the issues before they live it, but it means they haven't, in this transitionary period, haven't put a ton of work into the existing website, specifically the events. So if you're looking at the Visit McMinnville website now for events, you might not see an accurate snapshot. Just bear with us while we update the new website. The TSP, looking forward to getting that started. MURAC had no meeting. In a couple other things, I met with the chamber CEO for a little while the other week and went over potential business impacts from the potential parks and SDC changes that we may make down the road to understand those and work with him a little bit more. I also volunteered 3 hours at the farmers market being the crossing guard at First Street. And if you want to test your faculties and make sure you still got it, go down there and man, that thing keeps you jam-packed and busy getting people across the road, and it was very exciting and very fun. And then otherwise, I look forward to continuing to participate in the summer fun and the story time in the park at City Park tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll be there. Thank you.
Counselor Tukalski?
Yeah, so DI has not yet met since the last time we spoke, and last night we did have the Airport Commission meeting. I do want to throw out that Airport Manager John Pascal is extremely busy, but he's doing a great job. He has a lot of balls that he's juggling in the air right now, and he's making a lot of things happen. First of all, the Trimble Aviation took over as the fixed base operator effective July 1, so they're now in charge of the airport, which includes like the lounge and gas and all the amenities. Potcake Aviation Modular Building has actually been removed from the area out there, so it's been demoed. The McMinnville Pilots Lounge, formerly known as the Pilots Lounge, is being remodeled and it's being refurnished. It's now called the Aero Club, AERO, so it has a new name, new look. The city of McMinnville is actually rehabbing all of the public restrooms in the west hangar, painting the exterior of both Quonset hut hangars, so there's a lot of improvements being made there. Runway 422, which is the main runway that everyone uses during air shows and things, actually was restriped about 6 o'clock p.m. last night. And so we did get pictures of that from above, and it looks amazing. You can actually see what's going on, and you can see where to land rather than hoping. So it's pretty good. There's also a new windsock, wind cone, which everyone seems to be excited about. So I'll go with that. I'm not sure why, but the windsock's exciting. On July 20th, the perimeter fencing project started. It's slated to be completed by the end of October. So you won't have to, you can't walk directly from Galen McBee Airport Park onto the runway. Yeah, I thought that was always cool, but yeah, a little bit of a security issue.
Hence why it's not that way anymore.
I never did that. We never set up a picnic or anything.
I haven't done that either, yeah. Yeah, the air show is returning on August 14 through 16. Blue Angel number 3 will be flying because they are flying again after the Pensacola incident. So that's great. I would encourage everybody to buy tickets and attend that. We did bring in the airport rates, so that was good. We had a huge meeting last night, And we decided on literally nothing. We pushed it all forward because we needed a lot of information. And some of that information is talking about the agricultural lease with a family that farms the airport. So they do a great job. They're having challenges with their crop yield. The drainage is not what it used to be, and they're having some challenges in that area. Also, we have a 34-acre parcel on the it's on the east side of the airport across Crookshank. That family is actually going to be abandoning that area, and the family that picks up the remainder of the airport is going to be taking that 34.8 acres as well. So what that's going to do is going to reduce their the existing family's price per acre rather significantly in some areas. We're still going to be receiving revenue, but it'll make it pencil out a bit better for them since their crop yields are not exactly what they should be right now. The family also takes care of a lot of the spraying, the weeds, and keeping all of the areas of the runway around the surrounding perimeter of all the runways clear. And they do that just because it's the right thing to do. And so that's been really great. They have asked for us a freeze in their increase over the next 5 years so that their price per acre can recover depending on crop yield. So we are trying to write into that amended contract that they are going to continue to maintain as they have around the perimeter of all of the landing areas. So I think it's a good deal. I think that we do have a great relationship with them, and we'd like to maintain that. And so they've been a great tenant, so we're trying to maintain that. More numbers are coming on that one. Working with Oregon State Police as well. OSP actually uses the building out there. They also use the parking lot as a evidence storage facility, which was never the intention. And so they're going to have a bit of a conversation about the junkyard out there, which is actually not junk, it's evidence, but it doesn't look the best. So talking about that, we also have a 10% reduction from the state of Oregon in the OSP budget that we have to reduce basically the lease amount. And so we're not going to be getting as much revenue out of OSP as we had in the past, but it's still something that we shouldn't turn away. So in negotiations with that one right now. A lot of other interesting things. Warehouser, who just brought in the Blackhawks, is actually asking for more land and more space at the airport. And so right now, what we're considering doing and trying to figure out how we're going to do this is they would like to acquire the Comcast area, but they don't want the Comcast building and they don't want to demo the building. So we are going to be looking into ways to perhaps accommodate their need so that they can have another 35-year lease, bring in more helicopters. And it was discussed last night that it might be a great burn to learn incident to remove the Comcast building. So that would be fun to watch. And it would be nice if we could perhaps engage our local fire districts to see if they'd be interested in doing so. We do have it under testing right now for asbestos and also lead abatement as well, in case there is anything like that has to be done regardless. So that's being taken care of. Anything else? Well, we are meeting on a couple weeks from now, another special meeting because we have to have all of our information to City Council to make the August 25th meeting so that we're getting all of our information presented a week in advance of City Council. One last thing, we worked on hangar ground leases, and in order to get a improvement loan for your hangar, your 35-year lease, you have to have at least 10 years left on your lease. And on anything underneath 10 years, you can't actually borrow any money from anyone because everyone sees that as something that's just going to go away and there's no ROI. So what we're working on right now, the proposal was for a 5-year lease extension for those that had not been given the lease amendment, which was given to some but not to others. We're going for equality for all of the tenants out there. So what we've done is we've proposed a 10-year lease amendment, and that 10-year would get everyone into a condition where their hangar leases are a minimum of 10 years or greater, which means that they have the opportunity to borrow money from a lender and therefore continue to reinvest in the hangars that they have, upgrade them and maintain them. So overall, there's a lot of things going on out there, and Manager Pascal is doing a great job. So he's a busy guy, so kudos to him. That's all I have.
Great, thank you for your report. Councilor Benner?
Thank you. Went to my first landscape meeting. We discussed trees, the specifications on how trees are supposed to be planted, the list of approved trees, and then some citizen complaints about dead street trees and how that creates this sort of weird phenomena that a neighbor complains about a dead tree. The owner of the dead tree has to hire an arborist to prove that it's dead. And so it's, I think that we could benefit from making that process a little bit easier, especially with the, so many trees in our community dying. So I learned a lot, but we didn't make any decisions. And then Dan and I are on the street sweeper. We've got a parade coming in, and we'll have a brand new street sweeper with a brand new name. I think it should be in the parade.
Thank you. Public Works Director Jeff Hunsaker.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, wind socks are cool. They're a very simple technology, and it's beautiful because every bit of, they're orange and white striped, and every additional stripe is an additional 3 knots of wind. So it's more than just the direction. It's actually showing you how dorkiest thing ever.
I saw you smiling when I was talking about the sock. I was like, that
They
guy's
are
a nerd.
pretty cool. I like simple technology that works. In addition, we're trying to figure out the chamber's temperature system here. I've been sitting with a digital thermometer all night. Gianni turned it up a couple of degrees, so hopefully it's a little bit more comfortable tonight, but we're still figuring that one out. It's going to be something we're going to probably struggle with forever for whatever reason. We made a preliminary offer to a city engineer candidate that was accepted. Hopefully there'll be background checks happening next week while I'm out. And next council meeting, I'll hopefully be able to let you all know about a new city engineer we'll have coming in, which is great. I won't have to be doing double duty anymore. As I mentioned, I will be on vacation starting on Thursday, and I'll be back on August 10th. If you need to reach any public work, or if you have any public works questions or anything like that, just send them to Adam and he'll get it to the correct division manager for that. And then an update on the street sweeper. Yes, it is out there. Yes, we heard about wanting to name it. I met last week with our communication engagement manager, Noelle Maya. She's taken the lead on that because that's something she's going to be much better at than us public works folks. We loosely talked about it. She's going to look into a couple of things like what Newburgh did and things like that, but we're going to try to set a time for people to submit potential names, and then we'll try to narrow it down and figure out how to choose a winner. It's probably going to be, I don't know, maybe we'll bring like the top 3 out to the council and you all can fight over it or whatnot. So more to come on that from Noelle.
Planning Director Richards.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to read my writing, and I'm not doing a great job. So there is a rezone that went through the Planning Commission on July 16th in a public hearing process. It's fairly contentious. It is coming to you at City Council for a final decision. We've submitted it to administration to ask for a date for that. We don't have that confirmed yet, but I wanted to share with you, if you're getting contacted by people in the community about the project, it is a quasi-judicial decision that will be in front of you, so be cautious about your communications. And if you are talking to anyone, you're going to need to make a memo of that so that we can disclose it.
Councilor Benner, do you have a question?
Could you help us with some verbiage on how to respond and
I
stay?
would just say, and some of you as city council have sent me, forwarded to me your responses to people that are reaching out. I would just let people know that this is coming to you in a quasi-judicial decision-making process, and you've been advised not to talk to anybody about it. Well, it gets to in a public meeting. And just so you know, the premise behind that, so that people understand it, is you're acting as judge and jury on this land use decision, so you each should have exactly the same amount of information in which you're making a decision. So that's what we call the public record, and it's what comes up to you. And if someone's talking to you individually and influencing your decision-making, you now have additional influence than everyone else on the council. And it doesn't give whoever is the opposite of that influencer the opportunity to rebut it. So it all needs to happen in the courtroom, if you want to think of it that way.
Counselor Chenoweth has a question.
Where is this?
It's a rezone. It's the Yamhill County Soil and Water Conservation District property that's right across the street from Grand Haven and next to Shegwin Farm Park. Then I also wanted to let you know that we, as Councilor Cunningham talked about, the Affordable Housing Committee and Planning Team has been actively advertising the opportunity to apply for funds through our construction excise tax program. The applications are due, I believe, by August 17th. And then we'll be reviewing those and making recommendations to you as City Council for that.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Thank you, Mayor. Follow-up question to the previous conversation. Do we anticipate that there's any others coming to us in the near future?
Oh, that's a great question. I will get you a list.
Thank you.
Yes. And then lastly, wanted to share with you that we got notice from DLCD this week that they have approved what we call our UGB Work Task 2. We had 2 work tasks associated with our most recent urban growth boundary growth planning process. And they have approved Work Task 2. They approved it in this way, so I wanted to share it with you. We were able to meet the need of our residential land need and our industrial land need with land use efficiencies. We did not meet our commercial land need. And so they have left it open for us to amend the UGB in the future to meet that commercial land need if the City Council's policy chooses to go forward with that. So,
Thank you. Jeannie, welcome. Do you have anything you want to say?
Just a sincere thanks for the warm welcome from city staff, council, and the community. I'm thrilled to be here. And it's not just because of really neat projects like Chief Wood is doing by handing kids free ice cream for doing kind acts. I mean, that's pretty neat. But I'm thrilled to be here and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance Director, Katie Henry.
And I'm thrilled to have a new neighbor next to me, too. So for finance, not a lot to update. We've all been taking various vacations ahead of the year-end close. So now everyone is back in the office, and we are getting down and dirty and ready to get that year-end close done and close the books. So that's what we'll be starting in on. Update on the court side, the software update is finally in full swing. So we have a new implementation specialist who is really on top of things. Really appreciate the project manager. We spent 5.5 hours straight today in a meeting going over settings and all of that to get going, and we're hitting the ground running. So we should be seeing that actually come to fruition here. We're looking for it to start being able to be used in the January to March timeframe if all goes well. So that's exciting.
All right. Didn't miss anybody? Okay, so we're going to move on to the May 2026 cash and investment report is in your packet. Did anybody have any questions? Okay. The City Council will be going into the conference room for a closed to the public executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602P, as in Paul, to consider matters relating to cybersecurity infrastructure and responses to cybersecurity threats. Does any counselor need to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest or recuse themselves regarding this executive session? Okay, I will now adjourn the City Council meeting at 8:17 p.m.